all these signs of weakness sometimes are considered bullish. I mean, if everything is bad, it can only get better. And so we should all pile in and buy. I am not of that persuasion. I am not piling in and buying. No, no, no. I see markets around the world, many of them at all-time highs, and to repeat, when everybody's happy, in my view, somebody should at least ask questions. And I only know one or two markets that aren't wildly high right now. You mentioned China. I will also mention Uzbekistan, where I do own shares and where I bought more recently. But most markets around the world have been going up since 2009. Yeah, that's 16 years. That's a long time. That's the longest in American history. So maybe it's going to go on forever. All I can remember is that in my day, that people would say they wanted to intern, and they would come and intern for very little money or no money, and if they were any good, they would get hired. So I guess that's the answer. Just show somebody how good you are. Don't cost a lot of money, not up front, but if you can show somebody you're good, you'll probably get a job.
In other words, you got to hustle.
Isn't that the way it's always been? I mean, I'm older than you, and it's always been that way for me. And I thought it was that way for everybody. I've sold my U.S. stocks, but I can see what's going on. I remember back to what we were discussing, my very first job, I was sitting there doing a spreadsheet, my first day, first week on the job, and some senior guy came running into my office mate and looked it down at me and said, "You still doing spreadsheets?" And, I felt a little embarrassed, but I will tell you, that guy no longer has a job. Well, he didn't have a job very long because he was too good to do spreadsheets and to do deep research. He was above all of that, and soon he was out of the business. So I happen to still know that those who are willing to do their research and willing to do the work will probably be successful in the end. And it's usually the ones who love what they're doing who are most successful. And I happen to love what I was doing.
Despite soaring equity indices like the S&P and NASDAQ, seasoned investors are sounding alarms. Why? Because when everyone seems optimistic, history tells us that's precisely when caution is needed. The guest in this conversation admits to dumping U.S. stocks, citing signs that mirror dangerous past cycles. Profits are slipping, consumer spending is down, and even U.S. airlines, usually strong economic indicators, are posting bleak forecasts. Still, the markets push higher. But just like 2008, irrational exuberance can mask an oncoming collapse. It's not about timing the market, but recognizing the bigger picture before it's too late.
So when we look at the S&P and the NASDAQ, the last time we spoke, you expressed a lot of concern about where we were at that time. Are you still very concerned about the financial markets in the U.S.? And you just mentioned that you pretty well sold all of your U.S. stocks.
Well, I hope I mentioned earlier that I'm very concerned. Yes, I'm extremely concerned. I can see what's going on. Many markets around the world are doing extremely well right now. There are only a couple that aren't. And normally, when everybody's happy, it's a time at least to start asking questions and maybe be worried. So I'm worried.
And to your point, many markets around the world are doing extremely well. We're already halfway through the year. One of the top performing markets in the world was China, believe it or not, is measured by the iShares, up 22%. I think the second best was Germany, that's up 20%. And to put that into perspective, the US is up 5%, give or take. But maybe you can help me make sense of all this, because when I look at what's happening in the US, when I look at the global economy, all I see are indications of weakness. And yet these markets just keep going higher and higher and higher. And we've seen company after company come out with profit warnings here, especially after Q1. We're going to start seeing Q2 numbers shortly. and it's going to be interesting to see what they said. But the message we got in Q1 was that people were pulling back on their spending. And when you look at the airlines, I think the airlines are a great barometer of what's happening with people in the economy, both from a business point of view and also a personal point of view. But every airline in the US, Delta, American, Southwest, JetBlue, said they're seeing a huge decrease in spending or people flying. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you make sense of all these, I guess, dichotomies that we're seeing? That we see these anecdotes of weakness throughout the global economy, but at the same time, all these financial markets are making new all-time highs.
Well,
China and Germany have emerged as surprise winners this year, with markets up over 20%. In contrast, the U.S. lags far behind. This performance gap highlights deeper structural issues. While America is riding high on stimulus and optimism, countries like Uzbekistan, yes, Uzbekistan, are attracting smart money due to undervalued fundamentals. What we're seeing is a global divergence: frothy Western markets powered by liquidity versus emerging markets driven by tangible growth. It's a story of contrast and possibly future opportunity for those willing to look beyond the headlines and into markets where real value still exists.
all these signs of weakness sometimes are considered bullish. I mean, if everything is bad, it can only get better. And so we should all pile in and buy. I am not of that persuasion. I am not piling in and buying. No, no, no. I see markets around the world, many of them at all-time highs. And to repeat, when everybody's happy, in my view, somebody should at least ask questions. And I only know one or two markets that aren't wildly high right now. You mentioned China. I will also mention Uzbekistan, where I do own shares and where I bought more recently. But most markets around the world have been going up since 2009. Jim, that's 16 years. That's a long time. That's the longest in American history. So maybe it's going to go on forever. Mr. Trump will tell you, don't worry. He's got everything under control. When Mr. Trump tells me not to worry, I worry even more. So I hope it's going to go on forever, but I doubt it. It never has.
So let me ask you about that, or let me push back a little bit, because maybe it is different this time because both the governments and the Fed, or the central banks around the world, just continue to pump money into the system. And every time something happens, like we saw back in 2022-23, we saw a problem with the regional banks in the US. Silicon Valley Bank and two or three others all collapsed, but yet the Fed comes in right away and they just pump billions or trillions of dollars into the system and everything's fine. Do you think this is just going to keep going on, and so this market maybe never pulls back? Or anytime we see this pullback like we saw in April, May, it's just a huge opportunity to buy it?
Well, you said maybe that means it's different this time. No, they always have done that. Central banks around the world, as long as I've been in the business, all they know is print more money, pump more money into the system, bail out the system, save my job, save my job. They don't care about the system. They care about saving their jobs. And that's what they're doing again. In my experience, that's not different. That's what they've been doing since the beginning of time. Since the beginning of central banks, I should say.
From the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank to pandemic-era stimulus, central banks have made one thing clear: they'll do whatever it takes to keep the system afloat. But here's the problem. This isn't new. Governments have been printing money and kicking the can down the road for decades. Every bailout feels like a solution until it becomes the problem. The flood of easy money inflates markets artificially, creating a false sense of security. When markets rise because of central bank intervention, not organic growth, we're not building stability. We're inflating a bubble, and history shows bubbles always burst.
You and I have spoken a lot in the last few years, and one of the things you always bring up are debt levels. And in the US, the federal government is sitting on $37 trillion worth of debt. I can't believe that number, but that's what it is. Interest payments are approaching $1 trillion a year. And one of the big concerns right now are interest rates. And for every 1% move or increase of 1% in interest rates, that's costing the federal government an additional $300 billion in interest. How do they resolve this? And does it even matter anymore? Like, do you think the governments just keep kicking this can down the road and you and I are speaking in a year or 2 years from now and we're at $40 trillion?
Well, Jimmy, let's just say they continue to do this, and they will tell you that it's different. We have the system under control now. Don't worry, everything is okay now, and it's different now. And if they say that, which they will say, if they haven't already, my answer to you is get very, very worried. Because I know, I've been to this movie before. I know this movie, how it ends. And I know it's always ended badly, always. And I know it's going to end badly again. My problem is, I have to watch your show to find out when, but I know it's going to end. You tell us when, and we'll all act.
The U.S. federal debt has now crossed $37 trillion, with interest payments nearing $1 trillion a year. That means every 1% rise in interest rates adds another $300 billion in debt servicing. It's a financial death spiral. At some point, the system cracks. Either taxes skyrocket, spending collapses, or the currency devalues. None of those options are painless. And yet policymakers act as if they can ignore gravity forever. But the laws of economics are unforgiving. If we keep pretending that debt doesn't matter, we're heading for a fiscal reckoning unlike anything this generation has ever experienced.
Tell us the day before so we can act sooner.
And when you say it's going to end badly, maybe can you quantify that? Like, where do you see the S&P going? Is it down 20%, 30%, 50%?
In my lifetime, the bad bear markets, the typical bear market is already always gone down 50, 60, 70%. Sometimes, and some stocks go down 90%. The high flyers usually go down even more. So I will tell you unequivocally, the next bear market in the US is going to go down at least 70%. I will tell you it's going to be the worst in my lifetime, and I'm older than you, so it means the worst in your lifetime, because it's been the longest without a problem ever, and the situation continues to get overextended, more and more. I should say more and more extended, or worse, depending on who's commenting. In my view, what's worse, Alan Greenspan and those guys will tell you, don't worry, we have it all under control. You remember Alan Greenspan?
Of course.
Well, he's not there anymore, but I'm sure if you call him up, he'll tell you, don't worry, it's all under control. And even if you don't call him up, he's going to tell people that.
Historically, major bear markets drop 50%, 70%, sometimes more. Tech darlings and high-flying stocks usually get hit hardest. This time, veteran investors believe the crash will be worse than any we've seen. Why? Because we've gone longer without a major correction than ever before, and the problems, especially debt, are bigger than ever. If the S&P crashes 70%, it signals more than just market panic. It means mass layoffs, recession, and possibly a depression. Unemployment could soar past 10%. The system is bloated, over-leveraged, and fragile, and yet the central banks are still telling us, don't worry, it's different this time.
The central bankers are really the epitome of politicians, aren't they? You can never get the truth out of them.
Well, that's how they get the job. If they weren't politicians, they wouldn't get the job. If you call them up and said, oh my God, you got to be worried, they'd hang up the phone and call somebody else. But if you tell them everything is great, don't worry, we've got it all under control, they'll say, I'll give you a promotion too, and a raise.
And Jim, if you're looking for a pullback of 70% in the financial markets, the
I didn't say
S&P,
pullback. I said the bear market when it comes.
right,
I'm sorry, maybe I'm making a difference in a pullback and a bear market.
right. But what you're saying is you think the S&P or the NASDAQ will drop 70% from its highs, okay?
Always.
And
What I said was, Jimmy, it always has. Maybe it's different this time. Hooray! Maybe Mr. Greenspan is right. It's different this time. Don't worry. It'll never go down 70% again. But what I will repeat what I said, it always has in the past.
now, if that were to happen, that's essentially an indication of what's happening in the economy, okay? So things would just be in total dire straits. We would be in a severe recession or depression. We'd have significant negative economic growth. The unemployment rate would be well over 10%, I would envision. Would you agree with that? Like, where would you see that unemployment rate going in that sort of scenario?
Well, Jimmy, I repeat, that's what's always happened in the past. Mr. Greenspan will tell you it's different this time. Don't worry. And I will tell you, no, it's not different this time. It's always happened in the past, and it's going to happen in the next bear market too. And one reason I say that is because the debt in the U.S. is so unbelievably high now. The U.S. is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and the debt gets higher every week. So how can we not have a bad bear market? Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the central bankers are right. They have solved the problem. But I repeat, always in the past, that's what's happened.